everyone is talking about BYU's playoff chances like it's simply win and you're in on Saturday, and there is no path with a loss to Texas Tech. And I was thinking that earlier this week, but is there actually a slim path for BYU to get in with a loss on Saturday? I think there might be. All right. I know it sounds crazy. Let me explain. Welcome in. I am John Kurtz. This is the Open for Business Big 12 podcast. Thank you for being here. Please like and subscribe to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter at ofbnews.com or click the link in the description of the video. All right. BYU is sitting at number 11 in the college football playoff rankings, right? We all realize that. It's quite frustrating that they are behind Notre Dame, sitting there at number 10, despite a better strength of schedule, a better strength of record, and a better best win this year. It's not only that, there have been numerous examples this week of BYU being left off of ESPN graphics, which is just ridiculous. You'll see plenty of graphics comparing Alabama, Miami, and Notre Dame, which is what I think most people generally in the national college sports sphere perceived to be like the three teams jockeying for a last spot in the college football playoff, a last at-large spot. And conveniently, many of these graphics will just go down the line showing, hey, number 9, number 10, number 12 in the college football playoff rankings, leaving out number 11 BYU, right? And that is just crazy. I know it's been driving BYU fans nuts, but you'll hear people call BYU a bid stealer as well, which I get. I mean, it is like the way that the system has been set up, the way that the rankings have been set up right now. I mean, that's kind of what they would be. It would be legitimately like stealing a bid right now, but I understand why it's very frustrating. Okay. I do. I understand why it's frustrating to hear that. In fact, BYU itself is very frustrated to see this because look at this tweet earlier today from the official BYU Athletics Twitter account. So this is the graphic. You can see the original graphic is this just without the BYU stuff put in there. So they have photoshopped BYU into it. And this is the ridiculousness of all of this, right? Showing 9, 10, and 12, but leaving out number 11 BYU. Well, BYU has plugged in its resume there, and you can see compared to both Notre Dame and Miami, BYU should win out on paper here, all right? It's crazy. BYU was clearly very sick of all of the treatment that it's been getting from the playoff committee because there's even this tweet as well, which was quite funny. Of course, Charlie Day from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. This has turned into a very popular internet meme in front of the board where he is trying to explain just a crazy hypothesis here, connect all these dots, right? So the point being, this is what you have to do to show why BYU wouldn't be in. You got to do a lot of crazy work, all right? So shout out to the BYU social media team. That is very well done. I appreciate them doing that, and I understand their frustration. But if we want to have any bit of faith in the committee at all, and I acknowledge that what I'm about to tell you, the idea that I'm about to pitch here, it requires you to have much more faith in the college football playoff selection committee than anybody probably should have. Okay. Remember that Hunter Yurachek from Arkansas, who's now the committee chair, is the same guy that recently stood up there, was talking about teams 6 and 7 and made the 6-7 joke, right? On national TV with Reese Davis. That's who we've got in the room. But hear me out. You just saw there that BYU has an objectively better resume by most metrics than teams like Notre Dame and Miami. But we'll focus on Notre Dame here since they are actually in the field. Why then is BYU being left out? I think most people would tell you it's basically the eye test. Like Notre Dame has been dominating people. They look very good. Jeremiah Love looks like one of the best players in the country. And BYU, the one time everybody watched them this year was the game against Texas Tech. The only time BYU played a surefire playoff team. Now I think Utah is playoff caliber, but a surefire playoff team, the only time they played one was Texas Tech. And BYU was not very competitive, fell behind 13-0 at half, lost 29-7. And so that's what everybody has in its mind. Like, oh, well, they're not a playoff team because they didn't look like a playoff team when they played a playoff team. It's the eye test. Like, that's what's lodged in there. So follow me here. If the resume is better and all you need to do is just improve your eye test, if we're going to use that as like another column here, well, what if BYU goes out and plays a really, really close game? They put a huge scare into Texas Tech on Saturday, but don't win the game. And the example I continue to use is the Big 12 championship game from 2022, K-State TCU. That game went into overtime. K-State had a miraculous goal line stand and then kicked a game-winning field goal in overtime in a real knockdown, drag-out game that was back and forth and left everybody thinking at the end, like, man, that was a hell of a game, and those are two really good teams. Max Duggan got some Heisman love in that game just because of the effort that he put into it, right? Like, he really looked the part, and everybody came away like, damn, what a game. Well, what if that happens between Texas Tech and BYU, and Texas Tech wins a close one, 27-24, something like that? Now you would have had everybody watching, and BYU should have passed the eye test in that game and been like, oh, wait, actually, BYU does look like a playoff team when they play against a surefire playoff team, and one that we have now inserted into the top 4, right? Because Texas Tech now is ascended all the way into the top 4, where we think this is a playoff team worth a bye. That is a first-round bye caliber playoff team, and BYU just went toe-to-toe with them. Barring no crazy injury, like if Baron Morton were to get hurt, obviously all bets are off then as far as what people's opinions would be. But if Baron Morton stays healthy and it's just a really good college football game, I'd make the case that if the eye test was really the only thing you could tell us is holding BYU back, that actually could be a narrow path to where they would say, well, now actually they've pulled more even with the eye test. We can now use the resume to be like, hey, I think this team's actually better. Even though they did just lose the conference championship game, they have shown now that they could really compete with Texas Tech. And we know if they were on a field with one of these teams in the top 5 or 6, like they belong. I'm just throwing that out there. That, to me, that makes logically a ton of sense. I don't know whether or not the committee would view it that way, or even if they did, if they would have the stones to execute it. That's part of the issue here. Like, especially when the teams that you're up against, particularly the one team here, would be Notre Dame and maybe Miami. Because if Miami gets too close to Notre Dame, then you have their head-to-head, and that's a part of the problem too. Like, I could see the committee sneaking Miami up above BYU and in, and leaving both Notre Dame and BYU out, which I also would not agree with that decision. So it's a long shot. I understand. First of all, it's a long shot for the game to play out specifically like that. It's a pretty specific scenario where you get a classic game, a great game that BYU doesn't win, but Tech wins very closely. It's a very specific scenario that has to happen first. And then you've got to believe that the committee would do the right thing and not be blinded by the brands that they see there, especially the Notre Dame brand, which we know they go just absolutely gaga for. So, I wanted to float it out there, though, because I think it got brought up just briefly on the live show earlier this week, one of them, and I just didn't give a whole lot of credence or thought to it, but I was thinking about that more this week, and I was like, you know what, that is actually something to ponder, because if you walk through this all logically, that makes a lot of sense to me. That makes a lot of sense to me, and we have seen the committee do crazy things the last week. The one example I use here is to the Big 12's detriment. So unfortunately, that doesn't help the narrative in that respect. But TCU was number 3 in 2014. Going into the last week, they beat Iowa State by 52 points, and then they fell to number 6. So weird things have happened before on the last week. And the committee, Hunter Yurachek, left the door open when he was talking to Reese Davis last week for even teams that haven't played to move around. So they seem to be foreshadowing a little bit. This may not be as cut and dried as you think it is. So, hey, let me know in the comments what you think. Should this happen in that scenario? What are the odds of it actually happening? Let me know. Like the video, subscribe to the channel, subscribe to the Open for Business Big 12 newsletter, and I will talk to you all very soon.